The Steel and Engineering Industries Federation of Southern Africa hopes to be one of the key players in reviving our dwindling economy. The federation has welcomed this year's medium-term budget policy statement by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwane. In his speech, the minister proposed a private-public partnership in the financing and execution of large infrastructure projects. Now, the metals and engineering sector believes this will bring in more business for them. Joining me via Zoom is the Chief Operating Officer of CIFSA, Tafadzwa Chabanguza. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, Tafadzwa. Let's speak about some of the important points that the Minister raised about infrastructure development in South Africa and how it's key for economic growth in South Africa.
Yeah, good afternoon, Rufidwa, and thanks for having us. Great to be catching up with you again after earlier this week in Cape Town. So, Rufidwa, yes, infrastructure development is key to economic growth. And I think the way to describe it is there's a bit of a circular argument here, right? And that argument starts off with the fact that the minister has made this point a number of times that the stock of debt or the measure of debt for South Africa measured on a debt to GDP basis is actually not the main cause of concern because there are countries that have much higher levels of debt to GDP. But what is the issue is the economy's ability to service that debt. And the economy's ability to service that debt is an economic growth function. So higher growth allows the economy to service that debt much quicker. And we know in this current environment that we are operating in now that the infrastructure has been failing across the board. Rail, electricity, the discussion you've just had now, and water, which we see as a big issue, which will not only have social consequences, but also have economic consequences. So the point really then is that resolving that area of the economy being to fix the infrastructure bottlenecks, as well as the expansion of the infrastructure, will then unlock economic growth. And that's where we are particularly excited around the pronouncements around what the minister is thinking in there. Particularly excited, obviously, because steel is a very critical input to all those infrastructure projects. And I'll be happy to unpack on some of those projects that we do see. But ultimately, the point really is that infrastructure is critical to growth. And these policy pronouncements that will unlock the infrastructure bottlenecks are particularly useful and key and exciting prospect for us.
Yeah, and I would like for us to unpack those projects, Tafadzwa, but we'll do so in a moment. But before we do, I just want you to give our viewers a sense of the steel and engineering industry and the headwinds that it's had to face with the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, the slowing down of economic growth, and really just if it's been able to navigate these issues at all.
Yeah. So the steel and engineering sector represents 26% of the manufacturing sector. And in terms of scope, it's basically metal production, being non-ferrous and ferrous metals. There's service centers and merchants in there. And then also you have fabricators, an important component of the economy. And then you have heavy and light engineering, which is the downstream. So that's the manufacture of products like electrical cables, like power transformers, etc. The list is quite long. But so that's sort of the scope of the sector when we talk steel and engineering. Now, from a headwinds point of view, one of the most pressing pressure points that the sector has been languishing under is a low demand scenario. That's for the better part of the last decade and a half. And really, that's a function of low economic growth that you've already mentioned. We've also seen very slow capital spend by the state and private sector, as well as the SOCs as well. So from a headwinds point of view, I would probably put that demand side, on the demand side, I would put that as being critical to the headwinds that have been experienced by the sector. The sector is also an energy-intensive sector. So the electricity crisis that has also started in 2008, so you'd also say another decade and a half that we've also been experiencing load shedding or a constrained power grid, also has been constraining on the supply side of the inputs into the economy. So really, and maybe just to put some numbers to that, relative to the 2008 peak, the sector has been operating about 15% below that peak and contracting at a rate of 1.3% on a compound annual basis over this 15 years for the reasons that I've mentioned earlier.
I mean, it's a scary picture that you paint, but you did mention earlier that there are projects that are in the pipeline that will boost manufacturing and growth in infrastructure in South Africa. Give us a sense of what some of these projects are and the partnerships that you are looking to garner so that they can be spearheaded as indicated by the Minister.
All right, yeah. What I will do on that is talk in principle around what we are looking at. We are quite at infancy stages. In fact, in the note that we put out, we mentioned that even prior to this medium-term budget policy statement, we've actually had 2 engagements already with National Treasury discussing this issue. So it being also announced in the budget was a confirmation of some of the discussions they've been having with us and others. So in talking principle, the point really is to say that you can drive, we've mentioned earlier on that energy is a problem, logistics are a problem, water is a problem, and all these affect economy and social. Now, in the water infrastructure, we have member companies that make products in the form of steel pipes that go into the water infrastructure. You've got valves and actuators that go into the water infrastructure. These are member companies that manufacture locally, and they export these products, so it's world-class products. On the electricity side, equally, we have the proposed expansion of the transmission grid. In there, we have companies that manufacture product in the substation, the instrumentation, the intelligent instrumentation, sorry, is the word I'm looking for. You've got electrical cable, I've mentioned power transformers. These are all critical components that go into the existing grid as well as to the expansion. And on the rail side as well, there's deep engineering skills as well as locomotive production capability of parts that go into locomotives. Again, that is another area where we have member companies who, again, are manufacturing local and have capacity. What's key across all these sectors, is the fact that they've all been operating with considerable idle capacity because of the low growth environment that I've mentioned earlier on. So for that reason, that's why we see that unlocking these infrastructure projects across these 3 areas will really, it has the possibility to drive an infrastructure program. And I just want to make a last point on that it's not only the expansion of this infrastructure that we're looking at, but we also could run a sizable and impactful industrialization project just on resolving the current infrastructure bottlenecks.
Thank you very much for those insights. Tafadzwa there, he's the COO of the Steel and Engineering Industries Federation of Southern Africa. Tafadzwa Chibanguza joining us this afternoon.